we now have official box office numbers, and we typically do like to just give sort of a cursory conversation to what happened at the box office as it relates to these superhero movies and really talk about the business and how things are shifting or changing or what it all says. And we did actually discuss this a couple of weeks ago about the projections for the Marvels, which I believe, if I remember correctly, we're sitting around somewhere between 60 to 70 or maybe 65 to 75 million, which was low, no doubt about it, but certainly higher than where things ended up landing, because now we know that the Marvels represents the lowest opening weekend for any Marvel Studios release ever. There's no asterisk next to that. There's no conditional thing that I have to say to follow up that statement. This is at the bottom of the list in terms of both domestic and worldwide openings. The previous record holder was the Incredible Hulk movie, which came out in 2008. It opened just over 55 million. And it's only the third MCU movie in history to make less than $60 million during its opening weekend. The first movie to do that since Ant-Man, which opened with $57 million back in 2015. Another interesting thing to note is that even just a couple of years ago, while we were still in the throes of the COVID-19 pandemic and everything was just the wild, wild west, Black Widow still managed to pull in $80 million while it was also streaming on Disney Plus, which was a title that you actually had to pay for on Disney Plus if you chose to watch it at home instead of going to the movies. Shang-Chi, which came out a few months after that, pulled in 75 million, another brand new character that's largely unfamiliar with audiences. Similar situation with the Eternals, which came out 2 years ago in November and pulled in 71 million. So these landed far better starts than what we're seeing with the Marvels. A couple of more things that I want to rattle off before getting your thoughts. Looking at the first Captain Marvel movie again, super successful film, $1.1 billion globally at the box office. When you look at the opening weekend for that movie in 2019, $153.4 million. So we're looking at about a $106 million drop off from the first movie to the sequel. I don't know if that's ever happened. I don't know if there's ever been literally a $100 million drop off between a first movie and its sequel. You look at movies that came out earlier this year, like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which pulled in 118 million. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, though it fell off of a cliff after its first weekend, managed to still pull in $106 million. And so you look at something like on the opposite side of the spectrum over at DC, The Flash, that still pulled in $55 million earlier this year. And we know that that movie was a massive bomb for Warner Brothers, but the Marvels is coming in at a lower number. And again, as I mentioned, Ant-Man in 2015 and the Incredible Hulk, both previously represented the lowest earnings ever, but now the Marvels is it's going to hold that honor, I guess, from now until I suppose inevitably somebody else breaks that record. One more thing that I will say, which is it's a bit ironic, though this is the lowest MCU opening ever. It actually represents the highest domestic opening for a Black female director, which is kind of sad when you think
So
about
sad.
it, that this little amount of money comparatively to the MCU still represents the biggest opening weekend for a Black female director. So, with all of that said, man, when you look at the demographics and you see it was majority male, when you look at these numbers and obviously you compare it to what we've seen out of the MCU from this year, but also other properties from previous years. I mean, how do you feel about this? Just to know that this is a new low for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and ultimately, where do we go from here? What happens next?
Wow. Um, there's so much there that I don't even know where to begin. I think something that is worth noting about all of this is I remember the other day I tweeted about this movie on Twitter, like, oh, Black woman director, Black superhero, please go out and support. And somebody was like, I don't even know what this is. I was like, and that's real. A lot of people didn't even know the Marvels was a thing. Like the next upcoming Marvel Cinematic Universe movie was not on people's radars. I think that was like a real life indication of a couple things. One, first and foremost, it does not help that the strike ended the week that the movie came out. I will say that. Tiana Paris, Amaya Villani, and Brie Larson should have been everywhere, and they would have been everywhere normally had not been for these strikes. So I think by way of marketing and by way of showing your cast and getting them out there to market the movie, they were down bad for this movie. It is just absolutely unfortunate that that was the case, but it definitely plays a part in what's happening here. Not only that, but this year has been crazy for superhero films. Unfortunately, right? We really only have two success stories, technically, right? Between Guardians of the Galaxy and Across the Spider-Verse seem to be our only success stories versus Blue Beetle didn't do well, Shazam Fury of the Gods didn't do well. All of these movies, of course, Quantumania, all of these movies are not performing in ways in which they once were, right? People used to show up. And what makes it feel like a marketing problem, at least right in the point I'm trying to make right now, is because Barbie, Oppenheimer, and other films such as that, people were turning up. And we know how oversaturated the market was for that. Again, pre strike, all of that, how successful those movies were. And so I can't sit here and say it's not a superhero problem at all, right? When there's like other franchises that are very clearly successful in that way. Man, uh how else can I possibly feel about this, man? It's undergone just one of the ways in which we've talked about Marvel within this past year. We can't say we're surprised. In fact, we even was over here like, well, we won't be surprised if the Marvels does this and does that because of the reasons I'm saying. Whatever marketing setbacks they had because of the strikes, whatever shoot Carol Danvers is going through as a character, whatever Marvel is going through as a company, all of it is coming back together in this one big ball of unfortunately failure. And what last thing I'll kind of add is the budget for this movie is ridiculous. What what were we doing making this movie 274 mil? I don't know what I don't know why that was the budget. I really can't like put my finger on it. Because even think about The Flash, which another movie, right? That bomb that we talked about. Why did that movie got 220 mil? The Marvels got 275. I just don't, these are all ridiculous budgets that these films are getting. And especially, I already feel like there was a hill to climb to begin with. Even when they start filming, in my mind, there's a hill to climb, right? Like maybe they're going off the success of the first Captain Marvel. Very different ball game. Literally between the movie right before Endgame, people are hyped. They're gonna go see a movie like Captain Marvel. This is not the same. This is coming off the backs of the beginning of a year that had Quantumania in it. You know what I mean? It's not the same. And so yeah, again, it's a hodgepodge of unfortunate events for Marvel for sure, but also a lot of weird things on their part when it comes to again why this budget was so crazy. Maybe even some marketing choices for the film. Maybe they could have tried to do this and that. Maybe they could have pushed it back to give what I mean their stars more time. Now you only got one movie next year. Imagine the Marvels comes out in I don't know March, something weird like that, and you have more time to market your movie and people go see it. I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of different things and reasons, of course, that goes into this, but it is what it is at this point. And again, we kind of seen it coming.
So, firstly, what I want to say is that it's really unfortunate that the first black female director in the MCU is on the receiving end of these numbers. I'll just put that out there off top. It's also unfortunate that newcomers like Aman Vellani and Tiana Paris, who were a part of this franchise, I'm sure they were super excited. It's unfortunate that they are also on the receiving end of it, and of course, Brie Larson really is the leader of this particular property. I feel for them, and just overall, the fact that this did not meet expectations, and I don't blame any of them for what this ultimate turnout is. All of that out the way, there's a couple of things. Yes, the strikes obviously affected this because you do not have the stars actively out promoting this movie. You don't get Brie Larson on Hot Ones. You don't get Tiana Paris popping up on the Tonight Show. You don't get them doing the recaps of their careers with GQ and Vanity Fair. Like that stuff does matter. It does add value to the awareness of a film and people's general excitement for a movie coming out. We want to see that chemistry in real life before we even see it on screen. So there is value there. And I think Hollywood has probably underestimated that value for a long time. And we're starting to see how much value
Mhm.
stars bring to movies and promotion of movies. And that's why, I think it's kind of a brilliant move, even though it hurt that Dune did push until next year, because they realized
Mm.
having Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya and the rest of that
Mhm.
cast means a lot more money on the table will be
Yeah.
available for you because they can actively talk about it and promote it. With that being said, I do not think that that value represents $106 million from movie to movie. I don't think that there's that much value. So
Right.
there's something much more significant happening here, which I think, to the surprise of nobody listening to this conversation, in general, superhero movies, and now Marvel as a byproduct of that, are not it anymore. Period. That's the reality of it. As we have seen this entire year, time and time again, unless you are exceptional and you are achieving a new high watermark for your particular property, your particular brand, your particular
Mhm.
character, if it is some ordinary, regular shit that we've seen for the past 20 years, people will wait. They'll wait for streaming. They'll wait for Disney Plus, for Netflix, for HBO Max, because the
Mhm.
pandemic taught everybody across the world this shit will be available within 2 months max. And if it's not worth me getting up out of my chair, out of my house, off my couch to go pay an exorbitant amount of money, to be honest, at the movie theater, then people will just not do it because we've been trained to stay at home. This is not exclusive to superhero movies, because we have also talked about that Disney has had an absolutely atrocious year. This has been a terrible year for Disney. So many of the properties have flopped: Indiana Jones, Quantum Mania, The
Mhm.
Marvels, Haunted Mansion. Elemental barely crawled over the finish line and probably broke even at best.
Mhm.
Disney Plus has done so much to get people to just stay at home and wait, because if you're already paying for it, why go spend another $40, $50, maybe even $100 if you're taking your whole family to go see something that isn't exceptional? People are only going to turn out for those events and for those spectacles that they feel like they have to see, that feel like can't miss events. And frankly, the Marvels at no point ever felt like that. This movie never felt like something that had to be seen in theaters, especially considering the year that Marvel has had with a lot of the failures that they face with the Quantumania, or even on the Disney Plus side with the Secret Invasion. The general discourse around this entire brand and this genre right now is that, yeah, shit's not really good as it used to be.
Mhm.
And even if it's okay, I can still wait for it because that urgency is no longer there. It used to be when you put out a Marvel movie, it didn't matter what character it was. You put it out, it was likely going to be super successful, especially knowing that that was the only way we could get that fix in theaters. We couldn't watch it on Disney Plus, and they were building to something massive. We knew that there was a lot of crossover. We knew that every movie led to something next that was going to come down the
Mhm.
pipeline, and that is no longer the case. Everybody now knows that Endgame was the capper for what previously happened. What's coming next? We still really don't know. People are still trying to figure out, like, well, what is the overarching thing that we're building towards? It
Mhm.
doesn't even feel like we're necessarily close. And so all of that just represents, I think, the general times that we exist in, and that you have to be a damn good movie in general, regardless of what genre you fall in, what company or brand you represent. You have to be a damn good movie to get people to go, because we see a
Yeah.
lot of these big budget tentpole blockbusters are not doing what they typically would do pre-COVID times. COVID did so much to just change people's viewing habits and what they choose to go see and what they invest their money to. And with all of that said, I want to make it clear my stance on this, that I do not think that this low performing movie is representative of sexism, racism, misogyny. I don't think it's that. Yes, there are
Mhm.
people that obviously represent that vocal minority of the audience. Of course, there are people who are like, I'm not going to see that shit because, like, I don't care about these women, or whatever the case may be. It's a Of course those people exist. But again, it does not represent $106 million from movie to movie. That you cannot justify that. This is not a race thing. This is not a gender thing. I really don't think that. I think it's overall just a general lack of interest in the superhero genre at this stage in the game. And the only great examples, as you noted earlier, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, concluding a trilogy, Across the Spider-Verse, feels like this creative watershed moment. Like, that feels like stuff you have to go see. And outside of this genre, Barbie, Oppenheimer, those were moments. Like, those are huge, huge
Mhm.
moments. The next thing I want to ask you before we get into the review, does this feel like a turning point for Marvel? Because I mean, I think coming into this, they likely knew that this was going to be a bad turnout. I think that they are not surprised by
Yeah.
this. Does this represent a turning point? And what has to happen in the next couple of years, in the immediate future? What has to happen to get people to go to the movies again, to actually like show up and turn out and see these movies? Because at these budgets, with these returns, they cannot produce movies this way anymore. That you just cannot do that to make a movie for damn near 275 million and on your opening weekend pulling $47 million. So what needs to happen next? And also, in addition to that, what can the Marvels do in terms of performance? Like, will it even be able to break even at this point with this low return? Like, what's your overall prospect for what that might look like over the next few weeks?
Man, I think Marvel as a company is I think they get it. Well, we don't know 100% yet, but again, there's a lot of signs of good faith as we talk about in some previous episodes that Marvel has. It seems like they're doing something, right? They're pushing back dates. I mean, they got directors talking, telling us stuff. Like, it feels like they're moving in the right direction. So right now, again, when it comes to Marvel, one movie coming out next year, I think is such a good choice. And the reason is because I think another thing about it that you said, again, this all comes from like pandemic living, watching on Disney Plus, is the sense of urgency is not there anymore. Why, as a casual viewer, what's going to change me from watching Captain Marvel in 2 months than for me watching Captain Marvel today? What's the difference? What is the difference? If there's nothing in the meat and potatoes of the film, if I can watch the leak of the post-credit scenes on YouTube, if
Oh
I
my god,
can
all over TikTok, like the your
all
your
over TikTok,
your audience that lives on TikTok can just see the important shit that would require them to have that sense of urgency.
exactly. And then there's no reason to go see the film for another 2 months, especially knowing the thing that happens after that is also far from coming out. Like, they don't even have a project in 2 months. You know what I'm saying? Like, and we know Echo's not gonna have anything to do with the Marvels, literally. So what
Right.
is the urgency? That's something I think they're working on, hopefully, and that they're missing. Now, to me, with Deadpool 3 being one of the only movies happening next year, it's an event. It's automatically an event. The only Marvel film that comes out this year starring Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. I think that's like a different ball game than two other movies coming out during the year, and for this to be all this oversaturation. I think Marvel, again, right now, 2024, that little plan they have, I think that's the right direction. Now, for the Marvels, I I don't see this movie having legs.
The
I
Vince
don't see
Carter,
this
it's over.
movie.
It's over.
It's over. Like, I mean, this weekend is really it, I think. Because we are, of course, me and you know it, we are in like the now holiday season of everything. To be honest, part of me wishes they would just released it on Thanksgiving weekend. They might have had some families who wanted to go see the Marvel movie that's in theaters, but it came out early, so now they don't even get the Thanksgiving wave. But this is the season of a lot of those kind of lower budget movies that a lot of people do go see, though. A lot of people go see those art house films. A lot of people do go see some of the other movies that are about Hunger Games is about to come out. People go see them goddamn Hunger Game movies, like, no matter what happens. And so they just missed an opportunity, I feel like. Or again, maybe if they would have pushed it back, but they literally are quite in the middle in this random spot. It's like, y'all lost. I'm sorry, the Marvels is not going to do anything. It's not going to have legs. Maybe after the people know about what happens post credit scene and all that stuff, maybe when it gets to Disney Plus, people start watching the movie. They're like, oh, okay, it didn't do as bad. That's not the same as movie numbers. You're not making the same money as these movie numbers as you're doing in streaming. And so I think the Marvels, again, as a movie, it will just be one of those ones that kind of, again, at least when it comes to box office, it just kind of exists in the wind. It exists as one of the worst turnout for Marvel of all time. And again, that's unfortunate because I don't even think it's the worst Marvel movie at all. But it is what it is. Like, there's just no coming back from all the circumstances that it went through. And yeah, and now it's entering a season that is I don't see it weathering. I don't see it weathering through this season. And so, yeah, the Marvels, goodbye. If you've seen it, you've seen it. If you didn't, you'll see it in a couple months on Disney Plus. And that's there. It is what it is.
Yeah, I'll start where you ended with the Marvels in particular. Yeah, I think that it's over. This is going to be a massive money loser, which we talked about it. I did predict that it would lose money. I didn't necessarily it would come think it would come in this low, but all signs kind of pointed to this being one of the lowest grossing MCU movies of all time, and that's just going to be the reality. The hopeful side of it is that you can say like, well, maybe it could pull an Elemental and have legs, but the difference is that Elemental was like well liked. It got an A cinema score. This one has a B cinema score. So this is like a more divisive film across the board, which is also another factor that people saw the reviews and said like, oh yeah, critics don't really like it. It seems super divisive. I'm definitely gonna just wait now, and stick around and wait for the Disney Plus release. And so I don't foresee that being the case. And it's only getting colder outside. People are just gonna stay in the house. It's flake season for me. I think everybody's just gonna be like, yeah, you know what? I'll just wait and watch it at home. So that's gonna kind of be the fate of this movie, I think, but it's probably the necessary punctuation mark on this year for Marvel Studios that they needed, which I am dubbing the worst year in their history because it's just been so many L's and so many misses. But everybody has to have their reckoning to truly realize what it takes to kind of be back at the mountaintop. On a larger scale, to kind of speak to what you said earlier about the coming years, especially next year, I think Deadpool 3 is as close to a slam dunk as they can get. That is going to be a super successful film, even if it's not
Mhm.
great. Just the pure name value of it alone, the fact that you have Hugh Jackman back teaming up with Ryan Reynolds. I think that there's a floor for that movie that it won't
Mhm.
pass. I think it's going to be a big money earner, and if it's good, which we would I think suspect it to be just based off of Ryan Reynolds and his track record with this franchise, then it has the opportunity to be one of their biggest movies ever and maybe even one of the biggest movies of all time. And the fact that it can still possibly hit that middle of the summer date, I mean, we can be looking at a similar situation of what Barbie did this year and becoming the biggest movie of the year. Like that is totally on the table for Deadpool 3, which is a good thing. And I think that that one unequivocal win will mean so much to them as opposed to three very mediocre to mid-level returns that they were probably likely going to put out as opposed to what this new release schedule is going to look like. But I
Mhm.
do think that this represents a turning point. I do think that, as you said, they've already started to make moves and move things around and make changes. They are aware that shit is not it's not sweet. Like it's not sweet anymore. They have to do everything that they can to salvage the current projects and to make sure that everything that they produce is going to be meaningful. But they have to make sure that these movies are going to hit. They have to one ensure that the quality is going to be there, which it hasn't been lately. And secondly, why are people going to show up? Why is it important for me as a
Mhm.
viewer to go watch this movie? And I do think a part of that might be reconsidering the type of projects that they greenlight. I don't know if we live in a day and age when you can just put any character in a comic book costume and it's gonna do well. Like
Yeah.
that's not the time we live in anymore. And again, that's not
Mhm.
exclusive to Marvel. We see that these newer characters like a Blue Beetle or a Shazam or Miss Marvel or a She-Hulk like that stuff is fine. Of course, there's comic book roots and all of that is important, but people want the cornerstones at the end of the day. Like we got to be real about that shit. Like people want those characters that they know. And the only
Yeah.
ones that have proven to be Teflon are Spider-Man and Batman. And
Mhm.
that's not to say that those are the exclusive movies to make, but maybe just rethinking how we introduce characters and how we present
Mhm.
them to audiences and when is the first time we're going to see them. Should it be on
Mhm.
Disney Plus and nobody really watched the show, or maybe should it be in a better movie to get people excited and to get people to turn out. And so I do think that they're rethinking all of that, and they're developing a new plan to really put them back hopefully on a better track than where they have been. But